Hey everyone, it's Stephanie from the Farmhouse Mom, and today we are going to be baking some sourdough bread. The recipe that I use is from farmhouseonboone.com. So Lisa from Farmhouse on Boone, who I have actually had the chance to meet, she is a lovely lady and she has so many wonderful sourdough recipes on her website. She's my go-to for everything sourdough. I get so excited when she gets a new recipe on her blog and I can't wait to try it out. All right, so let's go ahead and go through the ingredients we'll be using today. So if all you have is all-purpose flour, you can totally make a loaf with all-purpose flour. However, I would recommend purchasing bread flour and also some whole wheat flour. We are gonna be using our Nutrimill Harvest today to grind some red wheat berries, and that's what we're gonna use for our whole wheat component. We're gonna add some sea salt, we have some water, and of course, we're going to start with our sourdough starter. I love my vintage Pyrex bowls. You're gonna want a nice sized kitchen bowl, and you will want a kitchen scale. So we are gonna go ahead and place our bowl down. We're gonna tear it out and we're gonna start with our water and our sourdough starter. We'll use 650 grams of water. And to that, we're gonna add 200 grams of active sourdough. If your sourdough starter is really strong, you can start with discard. I've made beautiful sourdough loaves with just discard. It's a better bet that it's gonna turn out well if it's nice and active, but you can use both. So we're gonna do 200 grams of sourdough starter. And then we're gonna go ahead and mix up that water and sourdough starter. You really don't need a lot of fancy tools to make sourdough bread, but if there's one tool that I would recommend, it's this Danish whisk. And I'll have a link below of the one that I purchased. When I was first starting sourdough, I would just use my fingers and it just sticks to your hands. It's just really, really messy. And this works beautifully. So this is the one thing, if you're gonna get something new for your sourdough hobby, I would definitely get this Danish whisk. To our water and sourdough starter, we're gonna add 500 grams of flour, 250 grams of bread flour. You'll want 20 grams of salt. And now we're gonna grind our whole wheat flour in our Nutrimill Harvest. So I have a few Nutrimill Harvest videos. I haven't made one for quite some time, but I think I'm going to, just because I have a lot of baking that I'm gonna do this week. And I'll leave a link below also for information on my Nutrimill Harvest. It's so pretty and it does such a great job. I love it. So we're gonna go ahead and we turn the Nutrimill Harvest on. I'm gonna turn the wheel until I start to hear noise. I'm gonna dump my grain in and then I'm gonna tighten it and get a nice fine consistency, and we'll grind our 200 grams of wheat flour. We've got our freshly ground wheat flour now, and we are gonna add that as the last ingredient. So that's all our ingredients, and we are just gonna take our Danish whisk and we're gonna stir it up. So this dough is gonna be really, really what they call shaggy. It's gonna kind of be just like a thick, gloopy mess of flour and water. And we will leave that to set for 30 minutes to autolyze, and just all that water is gonna soak into the flour, and then it will be ready for our stretch and folds. All right, so we have it mixed in pretty good with the Danish whisk, and then I'm gonna start to kind of take my hands and just make sure there's no big pockets of flour that aren't in contact with the dough. And this is why I like to use that Danish whisk for a lot of it, because your hands just get so sticky. Okay, well this looks good, and we're gonna go ahead and cover it for 30 minutes and then we'll be back. Okay, so it's been 30 minutes. So we are now going to do our first set of stretch and folds. What we're going to be doing is 2 sets of stretch and folds. The first 3 of the set will be 15 minutes apart, and then the second 3 of the set will be 30 minutes apart. So this is our first stretch and fold, and then we'll do one more in 15 minutes and then another in 15 minutes, if that makes sense. So we're gonna go ahead and wet our hands, and then we'll start with our stretch and folds. So we're just gonna go ahead and pick the dough up. We're gonna pull it, and you can see now that it's sticking together, where before it was really clumpy. So I'm just gonna turn the bowl about a quarter of a turn, turn the bowl, until I have it all kind of folded under itself. Sometimes I'll even pick up the whole dough and kind of fold it under itself, just to make sure that there's no dry flour there and everything's getting absorbed. All right, so here is our first stretch and fold. We're done, and we will set a timer for 15 minutes and we'll be back. Okay, now we're ready for our last 15-minute stretch and fold, and then we will start our 30-minute stretch and folds. So with our wet hands, we're just gonna scoop under and stretch so you can see how glossy it's getting and our little bubbles that we're getting. We'll turn the bowl a quarter turn. And just so you know, I have baked a loaf that I did not stretch and fold at all, and it still turned out really well. So don't get too hung up on your stretch and folds, doing them perfectly. All right, we are gonna set the timer for 30 minutes now. All right, now we're ready for our second set of stretch and folds. And so we've done our 3 15-minute stretch and folds, and then now we're doing our 30-minute stretch and fold. So we've just had our first 30 minutes, and then we'll do an additional 2, and then we'll be ready to bulk proof it and put it in the refrigerator. As you can see, it's getting even glossier than it was before. We've got our hands wet, and we're just gonna pull up here, a little quarter turn. And like I said, sometimes after I do that little stretch and fold, I'll just kind of tuck it under and let it sit there. All right, we've got 1 more hour. So we've got 30 minutes and then another 30. Okay, here we are on our second to last stretch and fold. You can really see how the dough is really coming together. So we'll do a quarter turn, stretch and fold, quarter turn, stretch and fold, and a quarter turn, stretch and fold. All right, we're gonna go ahead and cover this, and we've got 1 more stretch and fold before it's time for our bulk ferment. All right, we are at our last stretch and fold. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure my hands are wet, and then we're just gonna get a nice stretch, fold it down, and we're just gonna, like we did before, turn the bowl a quarter turn. We've got some nice bubbles here. All right, so we are done with our stretch and folds, and now we are going to cover it with a damp tea towel or saran wrap until it's doubled in bulk. Just gonna go ahead and cover it, and I'll set it out until this evening, and then we'll check on it again. We've got a nice rise, it's nice and doubled, but it's too late to bake tonight, so we'll have to put it in the refrigerator for tomorrow. All right, so here we are the next day, and we have our bulk proofed sourdough. We're gonna divide it in half. This recipe will make 2 loaves. So we're gonna go ahead and make a nice rectangle, and then we're gonna take our rectangle and we're gonna fold it into thirds. So we're just gonna lift it up, and we're just gonna lift it up. Now we're gonna go ahead and roll up our dough here, and we've got it to a nice roll, and we're gonna start shaping it. So we're gonna push and pull. We're gonna push and pull. And this is kind of our last chance to get a really nice, beautiful loaf that is gonna be that nice round shape, and it's gonna have a lot of spring in it, and it's gonna be a beautiful loaf. So we've got this shaped, and we are going to leave this on the counter for 20 minutes for it to develop a nice skin. I'm gonna bring you a little bit closer so you can see that up close on our second loaf. All right, so here we go. We're gonna have a nice big rectangle. I'm gonna kind of pull it out. Be a little gentle with it so you're just not kind of slamming it around. But we've got a nice rectangle, and then we're gonna fold it into thirds. And then once we get that third, we are going to roll it up. So I'm just gonna take it with my fingers and my thumb, and I'm just gonna roll it up. And then it's gonna be a little ball. And you're just gonna take your hands and you're gonna push, and you're gonna tuck under when you pull it back toward you. You're gonna push it away and tuck under, push it away and tuck under. Just until you get a nice little ball developed, and then you'll see underneath all your little pushes and pulls have formed a nice tight little dough. And we're gonna let these two doughs sit on the counter for 20 minutes. All right, we finished this step. We are done with our 20 minutes. They've developed a nice skin. And now we are going to put our sourdough loaves in our little Banneton baskets, and we are going to cold proof them from 2 to 24 hours, just whatever works for you. We're just gonna get them nice and cold so we'll be able to score them and they can score correctly. Also, the longer you cold ferment it, the more you get that nice sour taste. So we could bake these right now if we wanted to. They might not be quite as sour as a sourdough bread should be or could be, but it'd still be a great tasting loaf. What we're gonna do for our loaves is we are first going to put them with rice flour so they don't stick in these little baskets. So you can use any type of basket. It's an open weave. You might want to put a tea towel with your rice flour. So to get rice flour, if you just don't randomly have it sitting around like I do not, we are going to use our Nutrimill Harvest. So it's so quick. I love my little vintage Tupperware cups. They fit perfectly underneath. I picked up 2 of those at a sale and I just love it. We're gonna turn it on, turn the knob to where we hear the stones grinding, and then we're gonna put our rice in. All right, you can hear that, and here goes the rice. All right, we have our rice flour ground, and now we are going to place our sourdough loaves inside our little baskets. I will kind of sprinkle a little bit in the baskets, and then I will sprinkle them on top of the loaves. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and put these in our little baskets, and we're gonna cover them. I use a Menards bag. You can use any bag that you like, but this is what I use, a nice plastic bag, and we will place them inside nice and tight. Let me grab my other one. All right, we're gonna place these in the refrigerator now. I have a little refrigerator that my husband has given me. It used to be his beer refrigerator. Got a little chocolate here. It used to be his beer refrigerator, and now it is my sourdough refrigerator, and I love it. Okay, we have our bread now, and it has been cold fermenting for at least 8 hours, and we are finally at the fun part. We're ready to bake. So we are going to take our bread out of our little basket. We're gonna put it on some parchment paper, add a little cornmeal so it doesn't stick, and then with our rice flour on there, it should just pop out so we can score it now. All right, looking good. We're gonna get our bread lamé, and we are gonna score our bread so it can release and we can get a nice poofy bread. I usually keep it pretty simple, and I will just cut a nice X across. You do wanna make sure that you cut it pretty deep. All right, let's pop our bread in the oven. All right, our bread is ready to come out of the oven. It was in for about 20 minutes at 485 degrees, and then I finished it off with another 10 minutes at 440. All right, our bread is ready, and we're ready to go ahead and set it out on our wire rack for it to cool. All right, here we go. Our beautiful, beautiful sourdough bread. I will let this set out on the counter until it's kind of cool to the touch before we cut it open, because we don't want it to be gummy and dense. We want it to cool completely to room temperature, and then we will be ready to cut and eat. Our bread is nice and cool. I have a beautiful arm roast in the Instapot, and we are ready to cut and serve our bread. And I've got my vintage Bakelite knife that I love, and we're gonna go ahead and cut it open and see how it looks. Thank you guys so much for coming along with me and baking this beautiful and nutritious sourdough loaf for my family. And I hope you make an equally beautiful loaf for you and your family.